So guys, although the Ash and Iron update hasn't been received too well in terms of updates to the game and most of the game's content being bugged or broken in some way, one update that did come along with this update was a buff to Yanoya. And Yanoya was already an okay exotic. It wasn't really great due to the subpar tracking that was on the shrapnel projectiles that Hellion produced once it travelled a certain distance. With that tracking being not so great, it wasn't really that worth using. But with the buff that it received to its general tracking, the tracking is now really good. So good that it'll probably track down any enemies nearby and their extended families. So today we're going to be going over everything you need to know about this exotic, how to get additional rolls of it after you've completed the Edge of Fate campaign, and we're also going to be going over a build that I have for this exotic so that you can get the most out of it. With that said, first, what's this exotic do? Well, it has the perk Console's Pitch, where Hellion projectiles deal increased damage the further they travel, and eventually fracture into scorching shrapnel. What that looks like is if you use your class ability, you'll be able to summon your Hellion projectile, and once it travels a certain distance, you'll see it split into a load of smaller projectiles. Now, before this update, those smaller projectiles, when used against normal red bar adds in a cold group, would normally miss. But now with the Ash and Iron update, those projectiles are 90% of the time going to hit at least something, which spreads Scorch in a wide area, allowing you to not only get your class ability back much faster with certain fragments, but also just deal with adds much easier. Now, in terms of actually getting this exotic, the main way is going to be through completing the Edge of Fate campaign on Legendary difficulty. That's just going to give you the exotic for free upon completion, but the other main ways is going to be after completing the campaign on any difficulty, you'll unlock the Sieve activity. Completing this will just grant you the exotic. Now, after you've done that, you'll then be able to decrypt exotic engrams into this exotic at Rahul in the tower. Those are the only ways you can get the exotic, so best of luck in whatever way you choose to get it. Now, in terms of exotic weapons to pair with this, in the gameplay I'm using Polaris Lance due to it being able to scorch and also just deal with tankier targets as well as adds very nicely. This is a great exotic to use with this weapon, but another exotic that isn't quite yet in the game is going to be the exotic axe that comes with the exotic mission that we're getting later in this update. I believe it comes out later next month, so once that exotic comes out, that might also be a good option for those of you who want to use the exotic axe. This build is going to be probably really good due to the axe having some scorching potential of some of its perks. But if you don't want to be using any specific exotics, a legendary weapon option is going to be the returned Mida mini tool, due to it now having both Heal Clip, Incandescent, and Burning Ambition as potential rolls, and if you get at least a tier 3 roll of this weapon, you can have all those perks on one gun, which is just going to be absolutely insane. Now, you're definitely going to want to be using Incandescent in like the lower end to like on level style content, but then when you're going into those higher difficulty activities, Burning Ambition is definitely going to be the way to go, due to it being able to just much easily apply those Scorch stacks. Other weapons that you could use, basically any weapon that has Incandescent or Burning Ambition is going to be great. So if you farmed out a Yeartide Apex during Solstice, that's going to be a great option. But other than that, Mida mini tool is probably going to be the best option for you here, and it's currently very easily farmable within the portal. I would highly recommend just waiting and seeing when it will be a guaranteed drop from any certain activity. I believe a couple of days ago it was accessible via the Quick Play Solo Ops Master difficulty, so I was able to very easily farm out a roll of that. So I'd highly recommend waiting until it becomes available again from just guaranteed portal drops, and then get the god roll of Mida mini tool. Alongside that, it's actually really decent inside of PvP right now, especially with the buffs that the Mida multi-tool received, so it's a good PvP weapon as well if you get a very specific role. Now, I don't know what kind of PvP perks it can get, but basically anything like your Lone Wolf, Opening Shot, stuff like that. Your basic stat boosting perks is probably going to do you very nicely. But then moving on from that, let's now jump into the subclass breakdown itself. So obviously for this we're using Song of Flame and Phoenix Dive, due to Phoenix Dive having the shortest cooldown of all class abilities, although you could probably use the buffed Empowering Rift if you want to, but Phoenix Dive for me is just my preferred option. Next, Burst Glide. Just use whatever glide you want. For melees, I've been really liking Celestial Fire due to the extra range that it has, although Incinerator Snap is a great option due to it being able to immediately ignite targets if all the projectiles hit. And then for grenades, if you want to be offensive, Solar Grenade is going to be the best option there, but if you want some extra supportive capabilities, you've got the Healing Grenade there as well. For the aspects, obviously you're going to need the Hellion aspects to create your Solar Buddy whenever you use your class ability, And for your second option, you can really go with whatever you want. I really prefer Icarus Dash due to the insane movement capabilities this aspect provides, but if you want to be more offensive focused, Touch of Flame is obviously going to be the best option there to give you a boost to both your healing grenade and your solar grenade, whichever one you decide to choose. Now for the fragments here, the main one that you are going to need is 100% going to be Ember of Singeing, where your class ability recharges faster whenever you scorch a target. This is going to allow you to keep your Hellion up 100% of the time and is like the mandatory fragment for this build. Alongside that, Ember of Ashes to apply more Scorch stacks is a no-brainer, and then I have the pairing of Ember of Singeing as well as Ember of Mercy, so I'm able to create fire sprites from scorching targets. Those scorched targets will also grant me more melee energy, which is great, but then defeating scorched targets is going to grant me fire sprites, which feeds back into my grenade, but then also fire sprites that I pick up are going to grant me restoration, which is just some free healing on top of that. Now, the best thing about this build is that if you need to go into Well of Radiance, you can. There's no real super limitation here. You can pick whichever one you want. So for most content, I'm rocking Song of Flame just because it is a very good super just for both survivability and general ad clear, as well as some boss damage scenarios. But then also Well of Radiance for supportive capabilities is also very good. Daybreak really isn't all that great, sadly. I hope that they buff this thing in the near future, because it would be really cool to use Daybreak, but compared to Song of Flame, it is just really lackluster. Moving on to the mods then for the armor. The main things you're going to need, obviously, a solar siphon mod or a harmonic siphon mod is going to be great. I then have ashes to assets, so I gain more super energy on grenade kill. You're going to be getting a whole load of grenade energy with this build with the amount of fire sprites you're generating, so it's just a no-brainer there. Because we're getting grenade kills, we're also using firepower and grenade kickstarter, which is good. Then I also have a fastball just to increase my grenade throw distance, because I like having that on. For the chest piece, you can go with any damage resistances that you personally want. And then I have Innovation to reduce grenade cooldown every time I pick up an Orb of Power. Also better already for that immediate healing. And then also bomber mods as well. The reason I'm going for mainly grenade mods here is because you really don't need anything specifically to help you regenerate your class ability due to your subclass itself doing all of that. And if you have at least 100 in your class stat, you should be honestly fine. If you're lacking in the class stat department though, obviously mods that will help you get your class ability back faster is going to be the way to go. Those mods would be for the boots insulation, where reducing class ability each time you pick up an orb of power. That's going to be a good one. And then for your class item, I believe there is a utility kickstarter right here, which is going to be granting you class ability or energy whenever you consume your class ability, depending on how many armor charge stacks you have. But yeah, if you have the correct stats here, which is a whole lot of class, super, and grenade, you should be fairly alright. Now, if you have tier 5 armor, these stats should be very easily able to be obtained. Obviously, the higher class stat you have is probably going to be more important than I would say super and grenade here, due to the class stat giving you an overshield if you use your class ability when it's above 100 in the stats. I have it at 122, and I get a somewhat decent overshield whenever I use my Phoenix Dive, so that's just a nice benefit to have there. Otherwise, stats-wise, you only really need to be jumping into your super and grenade stat here. Melee, health, and weapons aren't really all that important, but if you want to be rocking some Radiant here, you can also take advantage of a fragment, if I can remember the name of it, that being Ember of Torches, where powered melee attacks against combatants are going to make you and nearby allies radiant. So if you want to be rocking a more weapon-focused build, on top of the Hellion Buddy helping you there, you can do that as well. Moving over then to the artifact here, there are a couple solar things here that are going to be helping you, but to be honest, you don't really need anything from this artifact to make this build work. The main things going to be here: Elemental Overdrive, picking up an elemental pickup or a tangle grants increased damage to weapons of the same element. That's just a nice thing to have. So picking up a solar fire sprite is going to be increasing the damage of your solar weapons. Alongside that, Radiant Shrapnel, dealing sustained damage while radiant or defeating a scorched target with a weapon, causes the target to release solar projectiles that deal damage and scorch on impact. That's just going to help there with general ad clear. Then we have Elemental Coalescence as well. Defeating targets has a chance to create elemental pickups matching your equipped super, so just more fire sprite generation, which is great. And then obviously Fever and Chill, rapid precision hits with solar weapons, grants radiant. And if you're using a stasis weapon, you're going to be getting frost armor instead, but we're mainly using it here with solar weapons to get that free radiant, which is very nice there. And then also we have Refreshing Threads, picking up an elemental pickup matching your subclass or a tangle while you have a strand super, grants energy to your least charged abilities. So once again, she's going to be helping you with your overall ability regeneration. But like I said, you don't really need any of these things. These are just nice benefits. So if you're playing this build in a future season that doesn't have these artifact perks, don't worry, the build still works fine on its own, but these artifact perks do just help it generally. And with that said, that is everything for this build. Hopefully you guys go on to enjoy the newly buffed Yanoya gloves. I'd highly recommend getting them because they are now, once again, just so good for general solar build usage. And this new ornament makes them look a million times better than they did default. I cannot lie, having to slug around the giant canister on the arm was really one of the downsides of using this exotic. But now with the really cool dragon ornament that's in the store, it's just a no-brainer and it looks really cool. With that said though, that's it for today's video. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed. If you did, if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, I would very much appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next one.